The coffee stain on my desk had been there a week before I noticed it had bled through a piece of paper folded underneath a stack of requisition forms, and by the time I peeled the page free, the words had gone soft and grey at the edges, like something meant to be temporary that had accidentally become permanent. My name was on it. Just that. No dear, no greeting, like whoever wrote it had already decided formality would give them away. I work the overnight bench in hematology at a mid-size hospital outside Cleveland, which means my world is centrifuges, cross-matches, and the particular hush of a building that never fully sleeps but pretends to around 3 in the morning. 6 of us rotate through that lab in any given week. Priya, Tom, Diego, Naomi, a per-dime tech named Walt who mostly worked weekends, and me, Sadie, 29 years old, 4 years into a job I chose because I liked knowing things for certain. Blood tells the truth. That's what drew me to it after a childhood of grown-ups who didn't. The letter didn't tell the truth. It told me a version of it, filtered through someone too careful to sign their name, and that carefulness is what unsettled me more than anything written on the page. It said I hummed old country songs under my breath when I was pipetting, off-key, like I didn't know anyone could hear. It said I always ate the orange circus peanuts out of the candy bowl in the break room and left the rest. And that once, months ago, I'd cried in the stairwell after a call about a coworker's pediatric patient, and someone had stood 1 floor up and not come down because they didn't want to embarrass me by letting me know I'd been heard. That detail stopped my breath. Nobody knew about the stairwell. I'd made sure of it. Checked the landing, waited until the hallway sounds died down, wiped my face before I used my badge to get back into the unit. I'd been so sure I was alone. I carried that letter around for 2 days before I told anyone, tucked into my coat pocket where it curled soft against my hip like something alive. I kept touching the pocket to check it was still there, the way you check for a bruise to see if it still hurts. "You're doing the thing," Priya said Wednesday night, elbow deep in a stack of coagulation panels. Priya had trained me my first year and still treated me like her responsibility, which I'd stopped minding a long time ago. The thing where you go quiet and start biting the inside of your cheek. "I found something," I said, and then, because I am constitutionally incapable of keeping quiet things for long, I told her. Not everything. Just that there was a letter, unsigned, and that it knew things it shouldn't. Priya's eyebrows went up in a way that told me she was already building a suspect list. "Diego's had a thing for you since the Christmas potluck," she said. "He made those little cookies shaped like blood cells. Who does that unless they're trying to get someone's attention? He said the cookie cutters were on sale." Sure he did. I wanted it to be Diego, honestly, because Diego was easy. Tall, a little goofy, always 5 minutes late with a story about why. Liking Diego wouldn't cost me anything. But when I thought back over the stairwell, over who'd been on shift that night, Diego had clocked out an hour before the pediatric call came through. He couldn't have heard me. He couldn't have known. That left Tom, who ran the day shift crossover and barely looked up from his monitor when I passed. It left Naomi, who was kind in a brisk, unshowy way and had never once, in 3 years, said anything personal to me at all. And it left Walt, who I mostly didn't think about, because per-dime staff drift in and out of your life like weather. I started watching people. That's the part I'm least proud of, how quickly curiosity turned into something closer to surveillance. I noted who lingered near my station. I noted who asked what song I'd been humming, as a joke, 2 separate times that week, which felt like either a coincidence or a slip. I noted that Naomi brought in a bag of orange circus peanuts on Friday and set it by the coffee maker without a word, and didn't meet my eyes when I said thank you. "It's Naomi," I told Priya, practically vibrating with the theory. "She's had eyes everywhere for years. She probably clocks everything and just never says anything." "Or," Priya said, "somebody wanted you to think it was Naomi." I hadn't considered that. It knocked something loose in me. The idea that the letter itself might be a kind of test, or a kind of trap, or worse, a kindness disguised as a puzzle, because the person writing it didn't trust themselves to say it any plainer way. I thought about all the times I'd wanted to say something honest to somebody and chickened out and said something safe instead. Maybe this was that, just with better handwriting. I almost stopped looking. Some nights I told myself it didn't matter who wrote it, that the wanting to know had become its own small addiction, better left alone before it cost me a friendship or an awkward shift with someone I had to work beside for the next decade. But then I'd feel the paper in my pocket, worn soft now from my own handling, and the wanting would win again. The break happened on a Tuesday, ordinary in every way until it wasn't. We'd lost a specimen mid-run. Equipment error, not a person's fault, but Tom took it hard anyway, because Tom takes everything hard, quietly, in a way most people mistake for indifference. I found him in the equipment room afterward, staring at the analyzer like it had personally betrayed him. "You didn't do anything wrong," I said. "I know that. He didn't look at me. Doesn't make it feel different." And then, because the room was small and the hour was late and something about his stillness made me reckless, I said, "Can I ask you something strange?" He nodded. "Were you on shift back in March? The night of the Alvarez pediatric call?" Something moved across his face, fast, gone before I could name it. "Why?" "Because somebody heard me in the stairwell that night, and I need to know who." The equipment room hummed around us, compressors, the tick of a cooling unit, and Tom finally turned to look at me directly, which he almost never did, like eye contact cost him something he had to budget for. "I was coming down for a coffee run," he said. "I heard you before I saw you. I went back up so you wouldn't have to know I'd heard." He exhaled. "I didn't write it to scare you. I've watched you be steady for other people for 4 years, and I wanted you to know somebody saw it. All of it. Not just the parts you show." I didn't say anything right away, because everything in me was busy rearranging. Every assumption, every hour spent suspecting Naomi's silence or Diego's cookies collapsing into this. The quietest man on the floor, who barely looked up, had apparently been looking the whole time. "Why didn't you sign it?" I asked, not really a question. "Because signed, it's a confession. And confessions ask for something back. Unsigned, it could just be a gift." He looked embarrassed saying it, the way people do when they've said a truer thing than they meant to. "I didn't want you to feel like you owed me anything for being seen." I think about that sentence more than almost anything anyone said to me in years. The difference between wanting to be known and being asked to pay for it. I've been on both sides of that line before, wanting someone's attention and also dreading the bill that seemed to come with it. Tom hadn't sent a bill. He'd just left a receipt where I'd find it eventually, and let me decide what to do with the information. I didn't fall into his arms in the equipment room, if that's the ending you're hoping for. It was smaller than that, and slower. I told him I needed to think, and he nodded like he'd expected nothing else, and we went back to our stations and finished the shift like professionals, because that's what we were and are. But 3 nights later, I left a note of my own in his coat pocket, unsigned on purpose, just 2 lines about the way he hums when he's concentrating and doesn't know it, off-key in a completely different way than I am. We've been together a year and a half now. People still ask how it started, and I never quite know how to answer honestly without sounding strange. That it started with a coffee stain and a stairwell and a man too careful with his own feelings to put his name on them until I found a way to ask. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if the drawer hadn't stuck, if the letter had just stayed lost behind the specimen log until somebody threw it out during an equipment audit. Whether being truly seen only counts if you go looking for who did the seeing, or whether some things are worth staying quietly grateful for and never solving at all. I still don't know which kind of person that makes me. The kind who needed the answer, or the kind who got lucky that the answer turned out to be worth all that looking.